I'm just sitting back down. Daim and Renee are Matt. Welcome to your MOCA Weekly Town Hall. Happy to be back. Very, 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 very hot Thursday in the greater New York metropolitan area. Coburn, you melt into a puddle yet?
I got a cold beverage.
Hey, are we drinking the same thing? We couldn't possibly, right?
Polar seltzer, raspberry lime. Mine's cranberry lime. My man.
Well, pretty close.
Cheers. This podcast will be brought to you by Polar Seltzer.
Even if inadvertently.
Keeping New York cool since 1882.
Does it say that on here?
It sure does.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm just boiling here in Toronto.
I was gonna say. And then
I don't got no seltzer.
No bubbles in Toronto.
The heat wave that began last week in Europe has apparently either undergone mitosis or has migrated across the Atlantic, and now every air conditioner on the eastern seaboard of the United States is working overtime, and I guess Canada as well.
Except in Mamdani's, New York, where temperatures are affixed to 78 degrees.
by a mayoral mandate.
Yeah.
Not just the temperature that's hot, it's also the conversation. So let's just jump right in on this Thursday. Let's start with AI stuff, or you know what? Let's start with the FWA stuff, because once we start talking about the AI stuff, that's going to be what we talk about for the next 45 minutes. And I'd like to hear what you guys think about FWA, that is fake world assets, which I'm going to bring up right now. A new project by TokenWorks and Rhinotic. Coburn, you're the one who brought this to my attention just moments ago. Maybe you can.
Well, I saw it on the timeline. I took about all of 2 minutes to check it out. Is it live? Purchase is live soon. It looks like a NFT gotcha gambling, right? So as I understand it, you put up an NFT on one side. On the other side, you put up a corresponding amount of ETH. And people are able to spin a gotcha wheel to acquire that asset.
Seems about right. It
Like
does,
to acquire the NFT and the ETH together?
I think the ETH is used. Okay, so let's look at that.
I think the ETH is used to assign it a rarity weight.
Oh.
Anyone can pay the pool-derived acquisition price, and positions are tracking a Fenwick tree.
Oh, okay.
Your entry can selected earlier than its weight implied average, ending its earnings before fees have had time to compound. So you can come out behind the cut you expect. FWA rewards have no guaranteed value.
Oh, that's what it is. So you either keep the NFT or you get the ETH.
And I have to imagine,
which is going to be generally more often than not less than what you paid for the spin.
Yes. So I know with like gotchas with whatever Pokemon or sports cards, right? So you like go into the gotcha machine. It costs maybe, in my case, one soul, $50 or $100, and you have like a 60% chance of getting something that is going to undercut that cost by as much as 75%. You have basically like a 25% chance of getting something that's going to be slightly more lucrative, maybe net you anywhere from like $20 to $100. You have like a 5% chance of getting something that will probably double or triple your initial investment. Then you have a 1% chance or less of getting something that's like very, very lucrative. So gambling. I think this is interesting because it traditionally with like the gotcha machines, whether that's what is it, like Packley is one of them, although that's real money. That's fiat currency, and the other one is like the crypto collect or collector crypt. Either way, that one is the underlying entity owns all of the supply, right? They're putting up the liquidity. So anytime you are getting an asset, you get something, you have an option to keep it, sell it on the open market, or accept an immediate buyback for 90%. So you're just people who are going in the cycle over and over again of purchasing an asset. They are always going for the 1%. So no matter what happens, they are selling the asset back into the pool for 90% of the fee. So the site is never actually losing, or rarely actually loses an asset, and keeps 10% of the fee of the price of the thing.
Yeah, I feel like a large part of this sounds like it's probably either illegal in a lot of countries or is soon going to be.
Well,
Perhaps.
it's like Trump said about his like crypto wealth acquisition. You just kind of realize that nobody's really looking into these things.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, I guess all I'm saying is that, whether or not this violates technically laws already on the books, like being able to effectively, run something like a lottery or like, a gambling operation on something you own, like that seems plainly to be something that current laws are probably intending to regulate, whether or not this specific scenario is done in a circuitous enough way to evade the spirit of those laws.
Well,
Yeah,
the
but real quick, if you remember, everybody starts somewhere. So, friend
Yeah,
of the
yeah, yeah.
pod, the friend of the pod, whether he knows it or not, Eric Voorhees, uh, created Satoshi Dice, one of the very first applications for gambling with Bitcoin. Um,
Yeah.
you
what is
Yeah,
know,
I mean, it's a good gambit, in terms of how stuff usually goes in crypto, because there's every chance that a shitload of money will be made for everyone involved, except the people playing it, before anything meaningful happens regulation wise.
what is Satoshi Dice?
oh, Satoshi Dice is exactly what you think it is. It was you put up Bitcoin, and I think you're just rolling dice against a computer.
Gotcha.
So yeah, so if you obviously get a higher number, then you get your wager doubled.
So, like with many things that I think Rhinotic and a certain class of I struggle to call them like influencer devs, but I guess devs with influence in the space who do kind of interesting NFT things. I'm sure that this will have at least a prolonged moment of attention. Whether it gets used is, I guess, hard to predict. But I do think it's interesting in that there is no kind of like house. I mean, there's the protocol itself, which is going to take fees off the top. But it seems that the point of this is that it is a kind of decentralized network of a gotcha machine. They do payouts not by how much ETH you are assigning to your asset, but by it seems like every position you have. So every NFT that you upload into the gotcha machine, amount of ETH that you back the NFT with, then determines the rarity of the asset. So, assumedly, if you have a CryptoPunk with 30 ETH backing behind it, that's going to be considered by the protocol so rare compared to a relatively low price NFT that it is expected to remain in the protocol longer and longer. And the longer it remains in the protocol, the greater share of the general, I don't know, all of the gotcha transactions it will earn.
Accrue. Yeah.
And so the risk, as they point out here, is duration. So the longer that your NFT does not get picked, that is to say, yeah, I guess it just can't get picked, the more you could be expected to earn. But of course, like everything else that's decentralized, this requires a ton of participation. You need a substantial amount of NFTs in order to justify this in the first place, or for anyone to make their money. I'd wonder what the actual amount of like ETH that goes to everybody is.
Should I put some Art Decos in here? What do you guys think?
I don't see why not.
I don't see why not.
Yeah.
There's nothing going
Yeah.
on.
I mean, again, I think
Let's do it.
Nice. All right, I'll do it when it goes live. It's not live yet, right? I can't do it. Can I deposit? I might actually be able to deposit.
There's
If only
500.
we managed to come up with ways to decentralize good things for humanity.
Right.
So
We failed at
there,
that. Sure.
so you can see the odds here, right? And the odds change based on how many assets are in the pool. The CryptoPunk
What's the
is
website? Oh, I'll just go to that. Never mind.
FWA.fun. Very
Okay,
low.
that's what I thought.
CryptoPunk, slightly higher of getting these other high price.
Well, we don't. I think those are just for illustrative purposes. Are they actually in there?
I mean, the odds seem to be changing. This number of pool backing is changing in real time, if ever so slightly. There's 11 pages currently.
Okay.
There's a lot of these 10,000 tokens. I'm not sure what those are. Maybe
that was his previous project that people got really a little butthurt about.
Well, you're almost certain to get one.
Yeah, it was like a way to bake in community to kind of like a pump.fun style token, meme token generator.
I would bet that you can't actually upload quite yet, or though perhaps you can.
Yeah, you really are guaranteed to get.
Yeah, you're almost guaranteed to get one, but so be it.
Yeah, you gotta stuff your box.
Yeah,
I think it's an interesting experiment. Again, the problem with all of these projects, whether it's crypto or NFTs or really anything Web3 adjacent, is like, can you get enough participation consistently enough that it like allows the protocol to work, right? There needs to be a critical mass of the protocol, not only in terms of the assets that are being like auctioned off or gambled on, but you need to have enough people who are gambling on the assets in order to make it lucrative enough for creators themselves, or not creators, but the uploaders, the depositors, to have a reasonable expectation of getting some money back. If it's just the kind of thing that's going to sit there for 4 days and be used by 20 or 40 people, that's not exactly, I think, worth the squeeze. However, if you have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, maybe even thousands of people who are gambling on this, I don't know any of the statistics for who's using the gacha machines, the more kind of traditional gacha machines with Pokemon cards and sports cards, etc. I don't know what the market is for that.
I think Renautic does a very good job of arriving to the zeitgeist on time, and trying to meet the participants that exist in the ecosystem with the mechanics that they would resonate with. I think the problem with, what was it, 10,000 tokens or 1,000 tokens was just that, like, these are not generally the participants you want in your community at this stage. It's like pretty degenerate. It's pretty nasty. They seem to turn on you in an instant. I don't know, but it's something new.
It's something new. I will say, I feel a lot of parallels to the open edition meta from, what was that, 2023, when all these artists were kind of doing open edition NFTs. And there was an expectation, rightly or wrongly, that once the open edition closed, the price of that asset would increase. There was a lot of like, I mean, this is, I guess, the underlying expectation of so many projects in the space, is that I'm going to invest in this because I've been led to believe that the people in charge of this thing, whether through means of whether cultural mechanisms or economic mechanisms or utility, that the price of the asset is going to increase. And there is something with the gacha machines of like, it is so transparently like a lottery and a scratch-off ticket. And the risk is so baked into the front that I feel like it is hard to chagrin the creators of the protocols too much. Like, I know when I throw 50 USDC to a Pokemon card gacha and I get a bunch of shit cards in a row and lose a couple $100, that's not I'm not raging against anyone, right? Because that's the game I'm playing up front. I think it was the same thing with NFT mints back in the day. There was a sense that, like, if I'm going to mint an NFT hoping for a rare one, right, in the PFP project days, if I'm hoping for a rare one, whatever happens to the price of the entire asset pool later is almost besides the point. Like, I'm gambling on the hopes of getting something that's going to not just bypass or exceed the amount of money that I've invested into the thing, but will have exponential growth compared to the rest of the project. So I don't know. All of which is to say is I think that it's not uninteresting. I'm not sure it's worthy of much. Like I'm not sure there's much to examine here, especially if it's not highly used, because that's going to be the key differentiating factor, right? Are people going to upload their NFTs, and are people going to try and do this? There are so few NFTs that are worth commensurate amounts of money.
I have no idea how to deposit NFTs here.
Perhaps you can.
Actually, while we were on this podcast about 15 minutes ago, it went live, apparently.
Oh, yeah?
It's just such good timing.
I have the purchase price is about 0.02. There's 0.0261 ETH.
Deposit rewards, deployments.
You're looking at a 91% chance of a common, a 7% chance of an uncommon, a 1% chance of a rare, a 0.3% chance of an epic, and a 0.1% chance of a legend.
Tell me what happens when you click deposit.
I get
you get like a profile page that says your deposits, no active deposits, no way to add a position. This is fascinating conversation.
I have not connected my wallet.
I have.
Let's see, should I just...
Well, I mean, for us, I feel like, if it does nothing else, it'll maybe get some decos into, new hands and pull in some fresh blood. But all in all, though, I have like a hard time imagining this will end super differently from like what was it, the punk buying bot.
Punkster?
Sure.
Yeah, like there, I'm actually having a hard time seeing how that hasn't succeeded more than it did, given that there's like all these punks locked up in it, and like,
well, it requires pressure on the floor, which requires participation in the market. And I think that the fundamental anxiety of the entire space has been, are people doing anything? And how do we get people to do things?
And of course, the answer is mostly, what people are doing are, trying to gamble for the big win, which statistically speaking can't reach as many people as are hoping to have it happen.
Well, I mean, okay, so like post 2021 or in 2021, whenever that time was, it wasn't just that there was like liquidity coming into the space from outside. I mean, that was obviously the prime motivator of that market boom and all the experiments that occurred at that time. It was that people who had put in very little money to begin with, whether it was on apes or CryptoPunks way back in the day, or all these projects, were suddenly flush with like monopoly money, right? So not only getting investment from outside, but people who were participants in the ecosystem suddenly had all of this money that was kind of disconnected from anything that it wasn't seen as an investment. They were getting Bored Apes for free. They got CryptoPunks for free. Maybe they were minting, this or that asset for pennies on the dollar, like before the true kind of boom in the end of 2021. But I think you need people to have that kind of monopoly money if they're going to gamble that much. At this point, right, like when I'm using these gacha machines and it's asking me to take my soul and convert it into USDC, that is Solana, and convert it into USDC and put it in these gacha machines, like that's not play money, right? It doesn't feel like play money. It feels like I'm gambling with money that I've earned or over a long time. Right? These are long.
It doesn't let you use like crypto directly, other than like.
I mean, it does. It just wants
stable coins.
Yeah, they want USDC, which when I'm on Solana, I get through transferring Solana. But
that feels silly.
They want to cut out risk, and maybe everybody has the same instinct of like, well, I'd rather have money than this unstable asset, or predictable money than this unstable asset. But
I mean, I think you make a good point. Like that definitely, will reduce funds coming in by reminding people doing the gambling that it is in fact real money.
Yeah, I mean, if I made $10,000 on a crypto a PFP that I got for 100, and I now have $9,900, and you're telling me I can deploy 2,000 of that and maybe hope to make another 10,000 or 20,000 or 100,000. Well, that's far more appealing to me because there's already so much gravy. So I might as well spread some gravy. It's obviously been a long time since that's happened to anybody. And so, wins beget experimentation, beget gambling, beget more protocols, which is what we saw with the meme coin thing at the end of 2024.
And we finally learned what world.xyz is on Solana.
What is world.xyz?
Another prediction market.
World.xyz. Should I pull it up?
If you like.
This website has been reported for potential phishing.
Tight.
Sounds accurate.
Maybe look it up on X.
It just says coming soon. World is the Solana prediction market. We'll let you know the moment we launch.
Yep.
Well, maybe it'll be interesting to return to this FWA thing in the near term future. Maybe it starts to flood with all sorts of things, PFPs and art and all sorts of assets that, not assets necessarily, because I'm not calling art assets, but all sorts of things that people are either trying to get more attention on or.
But what's interesting now is just the competitive nature. I mean, we saw this a little bit 5 years ago, but now it seems almost instantaneous that where there is one Pokemon Gacha, there are 20. And where there is one prediction market, there are 20. And where there is one trading app, there's 20. It's I mean, it is so hyper competitive. And I don't know why there's such a dearth of new ideas or experimentation, and everybody just kind of, probably just because that's what's worked in the past.
I mean, just low barrier to entry, right? Especially now too. With vibe coding. There's an idea that's out there making some money. If it takes you, like a couple of days and next to no money to throw up a copycat version of it, even if it makes 10% of the money being made elsewhere and goes defunct after a month, like that still made you money, I guess.
Yeah, you just end up cannibalizing your own. All the consumers quickly.
For sure, it's a very short term and like short sighted perspective. But I mean that's also the crypto thing, I guess.
Speaking of things cannibalizing themselves, shall we watch this Alex Karp clip?
Yeah, it's 20 minutes long, but
I have a couple minute breakout from it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. Let me pull that up. Alex Karp, for those of you that don't know, CEO of Palantir. And we are going to go right to the Palantir Twitter page itself. Here's Alex Karp on CNBC's Squawk Box. I believe this was yesterday. Can everyone hear?
Layer plus compute.
Yep.
It is really all three. So in our jargon, it's the value, the reason, just look at our financials. The reason why everyone is chillaxing with bad financials and growth with losing money is the client refuses to pay the true cost. The two places that actually make money, like profit, free cash flow, are our application layer called ontology and compute. What I am not just claiming, we can take an open model and in the classified or non-classified context, get it to the point of a frontier model. But you control the weights. So what is the true cost? Not just what you're paying. The true cost is is what you make minus what you lose, meaning the value of your business. But we can get the frontier application to be exactly the same as a frontier model without the risk of transferring the alpha of your business to another. By the way, you could do this with a frontier closed model too, but then the clients have to be able to ask and answer very basic questions. Are you keeping the data? Are you going to enter our business? What do you in the classified context? When the Department of War goes to you and says, "I need this application," Do they get to control the weights to do it, or do you get to control the weights? Are we really going to outsource the battlefield of this country to the consensus view in Silicon Valley? That is effing insane.
Oh, that was a good snippet.
Yeah, that was a good snippet. Of course, that was posted by Palantir, so they probably chose the best snippet. But that is a bit of a, was it 20-minute, mostly ongoing rant by Palantir CEO Alex Karp from CNBC yesterday, where he's talking a lot about frontier AI models and seems to be sharing a lot of the fears and anxieties and questions that just practitioners and users of the technology seem to have on the ground. I don't know who of you out there have heard Alex Karp talk before, but he's very all over the place, very jittery, very kind of explosive and expressive.
It feels like he's on those meth patches that SBF was on constantly.
Yeah,
we're just like railing lines of Adderall.
You could certainly see how that might make sense. Again, just chose a clip of that, but I think it's very interesting just on its face. Again, the whole kind of interview is this not takedown necessarily of frontier models, but it's these questions about, are frontier models overpriced? Are frontier models not communicating honestly with their client base about what they're doing with this information? You know, he mentioned, you know, companies like, I think he actually brings up Figma at one point, the kind of co-work software, and how Figma had a partnership with Anthropic, and then one of Figma's board members left to go join Anthropic, and 3 days later, Claude Design was announced by Anthropic, which is essentially a Figma competitor. So there's this trepidation in the enterprise kind of sphere about, well, if we use these frontier models and give them access to our data, like, are they just going to use that data and then build a competitor that will outclass us? So these are questions that people are concerned about, and it seems that even the CEO of Palantir, who I'm not a fan of Palantir or their ultra frightening surveillance / warfare applications for AI are, but I suppose it is refreshing for anybody in this world to go on a public talk show and express the same kind of fears that I feel like we express in this setting here. Any thoughts?
I mean, just for go ahead, Daim.
Sorry, I was just going to say I also read this take, and I'm not sure if it's from the Palantir guy or if it was just sort of brought up alongside or in support of. But I read this take that basically the fact that frontier model providers charge by the token is on some level like an admission that they know that the value they're claiming to provide is not the value they're providing. Because if using frontier models, you could be, you know, guaranteed to, you know, create all this value, then frontier model providers would be trying to get a cut, like a percentage of that, and would provide their services at least to, you know, sufficiently large and meaningful clients on that basis. But they don't. They charge by the token because, you know, at the end of the day, the hype, you know, far exceeds the value that's genuinely being provided.
Yeah, I think what he says specifically, he says, if frontier models are doing what they're marketed as being able to do, and being able to make somebody $1 billion, then why would my business model not be, hey, we're going to unleash our product to make you $1 billion and we'll take a 30% cut of that? Instead, they're charging by the token, which again creates these questions. This is just to back up your point, Daim, creates these questions of like, well, what do these models and their creators know of the value creation ability of their software that the general public doesn't, or that's separate from the kind of marketing that they're either doing themselves or is being done around them?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Colburn, did you have thoughts that you wanted to
I would say just that he felt so compelled to go on CNBC as CEO of, a what is it, $100 billion company, and kind of break character for once and begin to like drop the veil is intriguing. It must be that there's I just think exactly what he was saying was probably the truth. It felt like a rare moment where the filter is dropped and you heard it from somebody on the inside about what is going on. Not that it should necessarily be a surprise to anybody, but I think there is a lot of hand wringing about Anthropic being the next trillion-dollar company, that it's going to be kind of base infrastructure on which like every company must exist in the future. And the fact that there is no alternative add kind of the emergence of whatever also information they're collecting behind the scenes. It's just like a new paradigm.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that legitimately should scare everyone. The more we seem to be drifting in that direction, which, I'll note that I personally think that the events of the last week probably nudged us, decently off course from being locked into that future. But like Anthropic basically has just increasingly consistently and including recently this past week just keeps showing itself to be like a bad faith actor towards their own consumers and customers.
And not that that is existing in a vacuum, because of course, if we were just going to canvass the 4 frontier AI models of note, at least in the US, you have Anthropic, who I think, as you said, Daim, is not necessarily acting in the best interest of their consumers. You have whatever XAI, and Elon Musk, who basically advocated for a change to all stock market rules in order to allow massive rampant retail investment in the SpaceX IPO, at a massively overvalued number, which at least I think we can all agree, whether it ends up
well, to basically force what is it, like in stock index buyers or whatever to have to buy SpaceX stock, right?
I'm not quite as
So,
well
but the answer is yes, and maybe that is a good time to bring in Pindar's comment of nationalize all the AI, amidst also a recent article that Sam Altman has proposed giving 5% of OpenAI to the U.S. government, amidst also this huge rise and angry voter base of the Democratic Socialists. Something is happening, right? You can see a lot of the seeds of something happening.
I mean, it is very much an acceleration, in my opinion, of what was happening in the 2010s, what I saw happening in the 2010s, which was now that the Magnificent Seven companies were kind of amassing more and more power, and they had kind of stratified themselves. They'd launched them, stratified themselves kind of away from the rest of the market, and they were snuffing out pretty much all innovation. And the dream of the 2000s of, I want to build a tech company and become, up here, changed to like, I want to build a tech company that gets bought by one of these Magnificent Seven, because that seemed to be the business model, right? It was like, we are not just going to innovate in-house, we are going to purchase anything that seems to have any legs that can throttle us. So we started to see this very kind of late stage capitalistic accumulation of wealth and resources in a way that's not only led to ultra wealth on one side, but also stifled innovation elsewhere. And I think that the subtext of a lot of this is that this is the kind of AI, Anthropic, OpenAI specifically, that kind of dichotomy is the apotheosis of that, right? If an Anthropic is going to be treated as, and I'm going to get to the democratic socialism part of this in a second, but if Anthropic is going to be treated as a necessary piece of critical infrastructure, and yet by being a piece of critical infrastructure, Anthropic is going to find the know-how and the markets by which to release their own products to then throttle their initial client base, then you are going to see a kind of accumulation of power, influence, and wealth that is even, I think, anathema to, or was inaccessible to the Magnificent Seven 10, 15 years ago. And so
I have just one quick point to add on top of that. You have to consider the fact that also it was Alex Karp and Palantir that assembled the new surveillance state in bringing people's like medical history, student loan debt history, online activity all together for the government to begin to like process and understand. And he is suddenly feeling undercut by Dario and Anthropic in having more data than him. And I think he's kind of like wondering where his moat suddenly went and how he can actually keep his data and these systems that he's brought together, private for the sake of his government and private partners.
I mean, you can see how it would impact his company's ability to make a profit.
Yeah.
Although you can also see how the very fact that the Palantir CEO would feel threatened by, or would feel his company's profits threatened by Anthropic and OpenAI, I think all of this is very instructive as to what the power of all this data collection is. But of course, then you have the political reaction to this, which is, why aren't we owning some of these things, right? If this is inevitable, why are we allowing this to continue in a way?
Well, again, if it's the sum total of human history and all the contribution of knowledge over time and all of the data that we've contributed to the internet and all of our thoughts and opinions and feelings that we've posted on Reddit and Facebook and Twitter, and doesn't it feel like you should be owed something?
So I guess I'd like to ask you, Colborne, right? Like, I think that there is certainly a appeal to the current presidential administration within Sam Altman's even discussion of giving the U.S. government a 5% stake in Anthropic. But I think there's also more egalitarian leanings. I don't think in intent, but maybe in result. What is your lean on this? What does this make you think? Does it make you suspicious? Does it feel inevitable?
I mean, I just think it's the does it feel inevitable? Well, I always say that the pendulum always swings back in the other direction as far as it swung, right? So something's got to give, right? Something's got to give. I can't really even begin to speculate on what is going to happen. All I know is that it just doesn't feel very good right now.
Yeah.
And that is like a sentiment that is, I think, broadly shared, and like
even by Palantir.
Yeah, even by Palantir, even by like the worst of the worst. I think at the end of the day, people like want to contribute and they want to be productive and they want to feel like they're a part of society and community. But it is increasingly feeling like a war of extraction of the people against, like the power. And I think that is the fundamental tension that is driving a lot of the new companies that we're seeing, the new, like I said, like Adam Ranadic is very good at capturing the zeitgeist of the moment and what people are doing. And I think Fake World Assets is a name that has many layers other than just the gotcha mechanism, but it doesn't, I don't know, it just feels bad.
I am going to provide a strange and maybe anachronistic counterpoint. However, what I find that the things that AI is often compared to in the debates of whether it's a normal technology or not are the internet, are railroads, printing press, general kind of factory industrialization, electricity, things like that, right? These huge infrastructural advancements. Things do feel bad, at least economically, maybe even spiritually, but we've never had the ability to discuss a society shifting technology in real time the way we do now, because the vital infrastructure layer of information gathering has been, established for now 30 years. When the internet was being, I guess, given freely to all sorts of people throughout the 90s, right, when internet access was starting to be established, there was not yet this kind of like ability for the four of us to just get on a call and talk about the news of yesterday, right? And then everything before then, right? Like famously Upton Sinclair, when he wrote The Jungle in the early, I believe that was either the 1890s or the 1900s, he was looking at industrial like factory farming for the first time. And for a lot of people who had never had exposure to, they had no idea what was going on in these disgusting factory farms, whether in terms of the product or the disgusting treatment of workers. There was no widespread information dissemination method. Certainly conversations were not being had in real time with the most up-to-date information. There is something interesting on a philosophical, on a spiritual, on an economic level, that we basically have this engine of endless conversation that binds everybody together, from the four of us to the Palantir CEO to every kind of, any person that works in a business or has ever used any of these technologies, that touches every facet of society. I don't know. I mean, yes, it is terrifying, but there's also a kind of nourishment to being connected all together at all times to what's going on with this technology. And I don't know, being able to just discuss it and understand it in real time, or try and understand it in real time. Like, I can watch Alex Karp have this conversation and I almost feel connected to this person, not in what he's saying, but that he's thinking about the same things that I'm thinking about, based on the information that, the same information that was disseminated throughout the ecosystem a day before. So it's not to say that things don't feel bad, but there is a kind of vitalization that I feel, just given that this whole thing is going on.
I think that's very fair. I think, but it almost flattens power, right? Because if you feel the same feelings and you think you have kind of the same information, then you wonder how it's justified that people end up in these positions. And I think, just scrolling kind of through the comments, I think there was a lot of that. Like, how did this guy end up here? And I know there's just like a lot of that in general based on a lot of previous things, but these are the people making decisions on your behalf, whether you'd like it or not, with data that you probably scrolled at 11-page terms and conditions and hit you agreed with 23 years ago.
Yeah. And I think it creates, I feel like it creates on some level a danger for that power structure. Now, whether that danger ever actually materializes into something effectual in terms of producing, the kind of change that actually benefits the majority, that's a different question, unfortunately. But, being dispossessed of information, and specifically being dispossessed of the information of how you're being screwed over left, right, and center, is probably in the interest of, and to the benefit of, those in power. And as you pointed out, Max, I think we have a clearer idea than ever before of all the many, many, many unending ways that we're being screwed over. And all the many, many ways that nobody's, nobody who could be stopping it from happening is actually stopping it from happening.
In the interview itself, he praises China's totalitarianism government for being able to keep people like in line and focused on a singular goal.
Instructive.
Nice guy.
We'll take with that what you will.
But again, he was just telling the truth. It gets shit done. They have a singular objective. Everybody's online. Of course, there's a lot to be said counter to that.
Yeah.
But I know we got to get out of here.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have to kick off a bit early today. Great conversation, though. Maybe we'll pick it up next week. Colborne, Diane,
Fun.
Renee.
Thank you.
Pleasure as always.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Pindar, for your insight into the nationalization of AI. And yeah, we'll see everybody real soon. Thanks so much. Take care, everybody.